With all the craziness going on the world stage right now, I wanted to focus this week's video on something deeper than the political dance that's being shoved down our throats by the mass media. In this video, we'll take a look at the more ethereal things that have happened to some of us quantum effect observers, and why we should all hold a place for faith. To realize that there is something more than the physical world we often feel so trapped in. So without further ado, here are true paranormal and spiritual stories straight from you, my subscribers. Story 1, LP. I was sitting at a gas station when I took the photo that I'm sending you. There was an explosion, maybe some type of missile strike. The strange thing is, that gas station is no longer there, at the mile marker where I took the photo. I took the picture on the 8th of August, 2010. It was at 7:42 a.m. I think this explosion may have caused the ME. Google Pentagon-shaped crafts and orbs. I talked to a lady that lives in Melbourne, Australia. She took a picture of the same object on August 9th, 2010. She's calling it an orb. I think these crafts came in all over the world around that same time, but that's just my theory. L. Story 2, KM. Something strange has happened, which shook me quite hard. I don't know if it's related to Mandela effect, but when I try to go to sleep, I can still see it. I can still see like I'm somewhere else, and when I wake up, I have scratches on me. They're usually bleeding and about 3 to 5 centimeters long. This has happened to me twice now, and I'm afraid to go to sleep. I hope you understand what I'm saying because English is not my first language. I believe it has happened because I was feeling very anxious and scared. I was letting dark forces attack me too easily. I think it comes down to 2 options: start loving or be scared, and forever stay in the dark. KM. Story 3, LL. I had a very realistic dream where somebody from my past named Jack appeared and reminded me of how I once felt about him. I woke from that dream startled because I had completely forgotten about that connection. I've always been fascinated by the connection between mind, heart, and our health. I have a dual degree in biology and psychology, a master's in psychoneuroimmunology, and I've always identified as being spiritual. I have had lucid and prophetic dreams from age 15 on, and I've always been very liberal. This past October, after attending a conference in Georgia, I came back feeling like a completely different person, extroverted. I also suddenly became a political conservative in every way, interested in traditional news, money, etc. I no longer had anything in common with about 98% of my friends. I was scared and I was worried because I didn't recognize myself anymore, but it felt like this change could be financially beneficial, so I just kept on. A month ago, there was a period of heavy pollution here in Las Vegas. I had very bad asthma and was bedbound and on steroids. During this time, I had the dream that I described above. When I was 18, I met a man named Jack who was 29. He was my first big love, my mentor, my best friend, and felt like a part of me, closer even than family. We had long talks about energy, parallel realities, parapsychology, relationships, life in general. Shortly after we met, he was sent to Germany for work. During this time, I would often feel him if he was sad or upset. It went both ways, a sort of telepathic connection. We were never able to pursue a real relationship. In 1998, he was arranged to be married. He was from Iran. I broke ties with him because even though he and his soon-to-be wife wanted me to remain in his life, that wasn't something I could do. I truly felt like part of me had died. Afterwards, I started a new relationship with somebody everyone approved of, who was very abusive in private. He took me 3 years to finally get up the courage to leave. 6 months later, I began getting sick and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, lupus, TIAs, and a hole in my heart. 2 years later, my parents took me back to Bolivia to meet with a healer. She told me that my illness was a result of my not knowing how to work with and accept my spiritual gifts and energy. Since Jack, I had turned my back on the mystical and only accepted science. She recommended I go study at Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment. I hadn't told her that this was a place that I had frequently visited before Jack. She also advised me that when I turned my back on my gifts, I was no longer aligned with my energy and my body would let me know because then I would get sick. I followed her advice and I took a year off. In 2011, I became a reconnective healing practitioner, and in 2014, when I was considering moving to Denver, I went to a cardiologist to see if I should get the hole in my heart repaired before the move. They could no longer find a hole. L. Story 4, SP. It's time to tell another human being my biggest secret, and this is what makes me who I am. I've had a lot of experiences, but this was my real revelation. One night I returned home from a place called the Barge Inn. It's a big hangout for crop circle and UFO types. On my way home, I had a feeling I was being followed. I'm not a paranoid person, I just put it up to the evening's topics. It was June 1996, I got home and went to bed. It was 1:20 in the morning. I woke with a start, and I felt a fear I had never felt before. I was soaking wet, and the whole room had an electrical odor, like a kid's train set, that sort of hot battery smell. I couldn't move anything but my eyes. I was aware of two small figures on either side of my bed. The next thing I knew, I was in a large circular room, laying on a sort of, well, I guess a garden lounger or bed. The room was totally white with windows, and they were white as well. There were various bits of equipment around the lower part of these blocked out windows. They were like studio mixers with lots of sliders, etc. I saw the room between my feet as I lay there. The two small beings on either side of me were still there, although I couldn't describe them to you. They were white or glowing. Suddenly, a guy walked into the room from my peripheral. He stood in front of me, his back to me. He too was dressed in white, coveralls, and had a bluish belt around the waist, white shoes, and a large collar or small cape on his shoulders. He turned to face me, and his hair was shoulder-length, wavy blonde, and he had a beard. I didn't have my glasses, and details were literally blurry, but I got the impression he was smiling at me. He spoke to me in English with no accent that I could determine, but I'm pretty sure his mouth did not move. Still, I could hear him clearly. I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about. It was like English, but the words were nonsense at the time, and after a short period, he stopped talking. I was helped up off the bed and escorted by the two smaller beings into a side room. In this room, there were a number of people, male and female, all assorted ages. Some were crying, some were comforting others, and some just smiled. The very next thing I remember is waking up in my own bed. Soaking wet, the smell still there, the clock read 2:42 a.m. I leapt out of bed, and I ran down the hall to my living room. I sat there. I eventually thought to myself I needed a cup of tea. When I went to turn the kitchen switch on, there was a big blue flash from it. I filled the kettle with water and hit the switch to turn it on. Again, big blue flash. It was a minute or two before I got the courage to press the on button again. It worked. Since that night, I have lost my fear of everything. My only real fear has been telling somebody else about this, so why not you? You have a sympathetic eye, and I am so glad to have finally told somebody this story. S. Story 5. PD. When our daughter was about 2.5, she was soundly sleeping in her toddler bed. It was nighttime. We were asleep in the room next door, and we awoke to her shrieks of terror coming from her room. Running in, we scooped her up and we asked her what was wrong. She said she woke up and saw an all-black man with a big hat on standing by her closet door. I told her that she must have had a bad dream, but she refused to go to bed, and she continued all night to tell us that he was in her room, describing him only as black, no color at all. She never did see the all-black man again after that night, but to this day, she's 7 years old now, she often wakes up and screams for us, telling us that there is a shadow cat in her room. She has now seen this shadow cat a handful of times over the last 4 years at both our old home and our new. It's always in her room, and she says it stares at her and walks back and forth, but it's just a black shadow. I never saw a shadow cat. I never called it that. She came up with that description on her own the second time she saw it. It terrifies her, and she always insists it's there to do something mean, even when I try to comfort her and say it's just a sweet little kitty. She has seen it forever, and as recently as last summer. When we can't control the things in this world around us, I want to encourage you to control the things that are inside of you. Every day we have an opportunity to spread peace to those we interact with or to spread discord. Every living thing you touch has contact with another and another. And in a world where so many are lost, be a beacon. People will come towards your light. Remember, although you may feel like it, we are never truly alone.